They locked him in prison for 27 years for daring to demand freedom. When he finally walked out, he didn't seek revenge. He became president and united a nation. Subscribe and turn on notifications for more powerful stories that will inspire you and help you master English. Nelson Mandela was born on July 18, 1918. He was born in a small, quiet village called Mvezo in the Eastern Cape of South Africa. His birth name was Rolihlahla Mandela. In the Xhosa language, this name means pulling the branch of a tree. Some people also say it means troublemaker, a name that would later seem to reflect his incredible boldness in challenging injustice. He was born into the Thembu royal family, a tribe that was known for its rich history and its culture. His father, Gadla Henry Mafakanyiswa, was a respected chief and an advisor to the Thembu king. Although Mandela's family was not wealthy in terms of money, they were deeply respected in their community. His mother, Nosekeni Fanny, was a devout Christian. She taught him the importance of kindness, of humility, and of faith. Mandela's childhood was very simple, but it was filled with joy. He lived in a hut made of mud and straw, surrounded by wide-open fields and gentle rolling hills. There was no electricity in his home, no running water, and no modern luxuries. But as a child, Mandela felt free and happy. As a young boy, he loved to run barefoot in the green fields, to herd cattle, and to swim in the cool streams. He played traditional Xhosa games with his friends, and in the evenings he would listen to the elders as they told stories around the warm fire. These stories were often about brave warriors and great leaders, and they ignited a small spark in young Mandela's heart. He heard these stories and dreamed. One day his father told him something important. He said, "A real leader is not someone who wants power for himself, but someone who serves his people." These words stayed with Mandela for his entire life. Then, when Mandela was only 9 years old, a great tragedy struck his family. His father became very ill and passed away. This was a devastating loss for the young boy, a deep sadness that changed his world. But it also marked a turning point in his life. After his father's death, Mandela's mother took him to live with Chief Jongintaba Dalindyebo, who was a royal leader of the Thembu people. Chief Jongintaba welcomed Mandela into his home as if he were his own son. For the very first time, Mandela saw a life beyond his small, quiet village. He lived in the chief's palace, a place where he could observe important meetings and learn about leadership tradition and responsibility. Mandela began attending a local Methodist school when he was 7 years old. It was here that his teacher, Miss Madingane, gave him the name Nelson. At that time, it was the custom for African children to be given English names in schools. Although Mandela did not really understand why he needed a new name, he accepted it and focused on his studies. He quickly became a diligent student. He was curious about everything he learned. He loved English literature, geography, and history. He especially loved the stories of African heroes who fought against colonial rule. Mandela often said, "Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world." This powerful belief drove him to study harder and to dream of a bigger future for himself and for his people. As Mandela grew older, he became more and more aware of the inequalities all around him. South Africa, at that time, was ruled by a terrible system of apartheid. This system kept black and white people separated in every single part of life. Black people were not allowed to vote, they were not allowed to own land, and they could not live in the same neighborhoods as white people. Mandela could see this deep unfairness everywhere he looked. At the age of 16, Mandela participated in a traditional Xhosa ceremony, where boys officially became men. During the ceremony, the elders spoke about the responsibilities of manhood, but they also shared their sadness about the state of their people under apartheid. As he listened, Mandela felt a deep sense of duty begin to grow inside him. It was a duty to fight for justice and for equality. When Mandela was 19 years old, Chief John Gintaba arranged a marriage for him, as was the tradition. But Mandela had other dreams. He wanted to continue his education and to make his own choices in life. So he made a very bold decision. He ran away from home, leaving for the big, bustling city of Johannesburg. In Johannesburg, Mandela saw a completely different world. The city was vibrant and full of energy, but it was also full of challenges. He saw that black people worked extremely hard for very little pay, and they lived in poor, difficult conditions. At the same time, white people enjoyed almost all of the wealth and privilege. Mandela found work as a night watchman at a gold mine while he continued his education. He lived in a small, crowded room and often felt the ache of hunger. But he never, ever gave up. He believed that education would open the doors to a better future. Eventually, Mandela enrolled at the University of Witwatersrand, where he began to study law. He was one of the very few black students at the university, and he faced discrimination there. But this experience did not break him. It only made him stronger and more determined. During this time, Mandela joined the African National Congress, or the ANC. This was a political organization that was fighting for the rights of black South Africans. He started attending secret meetings where he listened to passionate speeches and began to share his own ideas for a fairer South Africa. Mandela dreamed of a South Africa where everyone, regardless of their race, could live together in peace and equality. He wanted to help create a country where children could play together without any fear. A place where families could build their futures and where justice would be for everyone. This beautiful dream became the driving force of his life. But he knew the road ahead was filled with challenges, with sacrifices, and with great pain. When Mandela first arrived in Johannesburg, he was just a young man full of dreams. The city was alive with so much energy, but it was also a place of great hardship. Black people were treated like second-class citizens. They were forced to live in poor neighborhoods called townships. Mandela rented a small room in Alexandra, which was one of the poorest townships. He found a job as a clerk in a law firm. The job was demanding, but it gave him a chance to learn about the legal system. He saw firsthand how the law was being used to oppress black South Africans. He spent his evenings studying by candlelight, absolutely determined to finish his law degree. Mandela's hunger for knowledge was simply unstoppable. He often said, "I have walked that long road to freedom. I have tried not to falter. I have made missteps along the way, but I have discovered the secret that after climbing a great hill, one only finds that there are many more hills to climb." The ANC had existed for many years, but Mandela and a group of other young activists believed it needed a fresh, more active approach. So they formed the ANC Youth League. This group focused on mobilizing young people, encouraging them to join the fight against apartheid. Mandela's speeches were powerful and full of passion. He spoke about justice, about equality, and about the urgent need for action. People who heard him speak admired his courage and his clear vision for the future. One of his most famous lines was, "It always seems impossible until it's done." While working with the ANC, Mandela met a beautiful and intelligent woman named Evelyn Ntoko Mace. Evelyn was a nurse, and she shared Mandela's dream of a better, fairer South Africa. They fell in love and got married in 1944. Together, they started a family. Mandela was a loving husband and father, but his deep commitment to the struggle for freedom often kept him away from his home. Mandela's personal life was not easy. He had to balance his responsibilities as a father with his growing role as a leader. He once said, "There is no passion to be found in settling for a life that is less than the one you are capable of living. In 1948, the South African government introduced new, harsher apartheid laws. These laws made life even harder for black people. They dictated exactly where black people could live, where they could work, and even whom they could marry. Mandela and his colleagues in the ANC knew they had to act. They could not stand by and watch. Mandela helped to organize peaceful protest strikes and marches. He believed deeply in nonviolent resistance, inspired by the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi. Thousands and thousands of people joined the movement, risking their jobs, their homes, and even their lives for the cause. But the government responded with violence. Protesters were beaten, arrested, and sometimes even killed. Mandela himself was arrested multiple times, but he refused to give up his fight. He said, "Courage is not the absence of fear. It is inspiring others to move beyond it." Despite all these challenges, Mandela achieved one of his biggest personal dreams. In 1952, he became a lawyer. He and his good friend Oliver Tambo opened the very first black-owned law firm in South Africa. It was called Mandela and Tambo Attorneys. The firm provided free or low-cost legal help to black South Africans who were victims of apartheid laws. Mandela spent his days in courtrooms defending people who had been treated unfairly. At night, he worked with the ANC to plan the next steps in their fight for freedom. Then, in 1960, a tragic event happened that changed the course of Mandela's life forever. During a peaceful protest in the town of Sharpeville, the police opened fire on an unarmed crowd. They killed 69 people and injured hundreds more. This terrible massacre shocked the world. It also made Mandela realize that peaceful protests alone might not be enough to end apartheid. The government banned the ANC, forcing Mandela and other leaders to go underground to work in secret. They formed a secret armed group called Umkhonto we Sizwe, which means Spear of the Nation. Mandela explained that their goal was not to harm people, but to sabotage government structures like power plants and transportation lines that supported the apartheid system. Nelson Mandela became a wanted man. He had to travel across South Africa in disguise, constantly moving to avoid being caught. He organized protests and recruited people for the struggle. He also traveled to other countries to gain support for the fight against apartheid. During this time, Mandela became known as the Black Pimpernel because he was so good at evading capture by the police. But his life was full of danger and loneliness. He couldn't see his family, and he knew that every single day could be his last day as a free man. In 1962, Mandela was finally arrested. He was charged with sabotage, treason, and attempting to overthrow the government. At his trial, he used the courtroom as a platform to speak out against the injustice of apartheid. In his famous speech from the dock, he said, "I have fought against white domination, and I have fought against black domination. I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an ideal which I hope to live for and to achieve. But if needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die." Mandela was sentenced to life in prison. He was sent to Robben Island, a bleak and isolated prison off the coast of Cape Town. Life in the prison was incredibly harsh. Mandela was forced to do hard labor in a limestone quarry. The bright sun reflecting off the white stone permanently damaged his eyes. He lived in a tiny cell with no bed and only a thin mat on the cold concrete floor. The guards were often cruel, and Mandela was allowed only one visitor and one letter every 6 months. But even in these terrible conditions, Mandela refused to be broken. He used his time in prison to study, to reflect, and to plan for the future. He even learned the Afrikaans language, the language of his oppressors, so that he could understand them better. He also became a teacher to younger prisoners, sharing his knowledge about leadership and teaching them the importance of staying hopeful. Mandela said, "I am fundamentally an optimist. Whether that comes from nature or nurture, I cannot say. Part of being optimistic is keeping one's head pointed toward the sun, one's feet moving forward." As the years slowly passed, Nelson Mandela became a powerful symbol of hope for millions of people all around the world. Protests against apartheid grew stronger, both inside and outside of South Africa. World leaders' organizations and everyday people called for Mandela's release. But the South African government refused to listen. When Mandela was first imprisoned, many people thought his fight was over. But the truth was his imprisonment became the spark that ignited a global movement. Mandela spent 27 long years in prison, most of them on Robben Island. Every single day was a test of his patience and his willpower. The guards tried to humiliate him and break his spirit, but Mandela remained dignified. The work was grueling, but he kept his mind and his spirit strong. He once said, "I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear." During those long, lonely years, Mandela became more than just a prisoner. He became a global symbol of the fight against injustice. Around the world, people chanted, "Free Nelson Mandela." His name was whispered in schools, it was sung in protest songs, and it was carried on banners in marches. While Mandela was in prison, South Africa became a nation under siege. The apartheid government faced increasing protest strikes and international sanctions. Many countries refused to trade with South Africa. Famous musicians like Stevie Wonder and Bob Marley dedicated songs to Mandela and the anti-apartheid cause. Even from his tiny prison cell, Mandela's leadership was felt. He found secret ways to communicate with other ANC leaders. And eventually, he even began secret negotiations with the apartheid government. Mandela understood something very crucial: to truly win, South Africa needed peace, not revenge. Then, on February 11, 1990, the world watched. After 27 years, Nelson Mandela walked out of prison. He was 71 years old. His hair was gray, but his spirit was unbroken. His first words to the cheering crowds were, "I stand here before you not as a prophet, but as a humble servant of you the people. Today, the time for the healing of the wounds has come. The time to build is upon us." The streets erupted in celebration. People danced, they cried, and they cheered. Mandela's release was not just his own personal freedom. It was the first real step toward a free South Africa for everyone. After his release, Mandela faced a very tough question. How could South Africa possibly heal after so much pain and division? Many people wanted revenge against those who had supported apartheid. But Mandela preached a message of forgiveness. He met with the very people who had oppressed him and his people for so long. He worked with them to build a new nation. He said, "Resentment is like drinking poison and then hoping it will kill your enemies." Mandela became the leader of the ANC once again, and he began working toward South Africa's first truly democratic election. His goal was simple, but so powerful: a South Africa where everyone, black, white, Indian, and colored, had equal rights and an equal voice. In 1994, history was made. For the very first time, all South Africans, regardless of their race, could vote. People stood in long lines, some waiting for hours and hours to finally cast their votes. On April 27, 1994, Nelson Mandela was elected the first black president of South Africa. His inauguration was a moment of pure hope. Leaders from all around the world came to celebrate with him. In his speech, Mandela said, Never, never, and never again shall it be that this beautiful land will again experience the oppression of one by another. South Africa had a new beginning, and Mandela was at the very heart of it. As President Mandela focused on uniting the country, one of his most famous acts was his support for South Africa's national rugby team, the Springboks, during the 1995 Rugby World Cup. For a long time, rugby was seen as a white man's sport, a symbol of the old South Africa. But Mandela wore the Springbok jersey and stood alongside the team, showing the world that unity was possible. This incredible act of reconciliation was later shown in the movie Invictus. The title of the movie came from a poem that Mandela loved, which ends with the powerful lines, "I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul." After serving one term as president, Mandela stepped down from power in 1999. In doing so, he proved that true leaders know when to let go. He spent his later years as a global statesman advocating for peace, for education, and for the fight against poverty and HIV/AIDS. Mandela traveled the world, meeting with leaders, inspiring young people, and reminding everyone of the great power of forgiveness and determination. On December 5, 2013, Nelson Mandela passed away at the age of 95. The world mourned the loss of a true giant of humanity. Millions of people attended his memorial, including presidents, celebrities, and ordinary citizens whose lives he had touched. Mandela's legacy is not just in South Africa, it is in every corner of the globe. He taught us that no matter how dark the road may seem, no matter how high the mountain is, hope and perseverance can change the world. Nelson Mandela's life is proof that greatness is not something you are born with. It is something you achieve through hard work, through sacrifice, and through an unwavering belief in your dreams. His story reminds us to never give up even in the hardest of times. It reminds us that forgiveness is stronger than hate, and it shows us that one person truly can make a difference. Nelson Mandela's life is a testament to the power of determination, patience, and forgiveness. He spent 27 years in prison for a cause he believed in. When he was finally released, he could have chosen revenge or anger, but instead, he chose peace. He showed the world that even in the darkest moments, we can still choose the light of hope and love. Mandela's journey was not easy. There were many times when he could have given up, many times when life seemed impossible. But he kept moving forward. He knew that change was not easy, but he believed that small steps could eventually make a big difference. He showed us that we do not have to be perfect, but we must never stop trying. In every challenge he faced, whether it was in the streets of South Africa or in the cold cell of his prison, Mandela always remembered his dream of a free, equal, and peaceful world. And even though his fight was long and difficult, it was not just about him. He fought for the future of his children, his grandchildren, and for all the generations to come. Mandela said, "I never lose. I either win or learn." This way of thinking shows us that failure is not the end of the road. Every time we fall, we can choose to rise again. Every mistake is a chance to learn to grow and to become stronger. No matter how many times life knocks us down, we can always stand up and keep going. His life teaches us that no matter where we come from or what challenges we face, we all have the power to make a difference in the world. We can be leaders even in the smallest ways. It does not matter if we are not famous or powerful like Nelson Mandela. Every kind word, every act of kindness, every moment we stand up for what is right, these things matter. Mandela's story is a story for everyone. It shows that no matter how hard life gets, we have the strength inside us to keep moving forward. You have the power to overcome any obstacle. You are stronger than you think. So remember Nelson Mandela when you feel like giving up. Think about the hardships he faced, the struggles he endured. But most importantly, think about how he kept going. He did not let anything stop him, and neither should you. Your dreams are worth fighting for, and you have everything inside you to achieve them. Mandela's journey was not just about changing South Africa. It was about changing the world, and he did. He inspired millions of people, and his message will continue to inspire for generations to come. So take his story to heart. Never forget that with hope, love, and determination, you can make the world a better place. In Mandela's own words, "The greatest glory in living lies not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall." This is where we end the story of Nelson Mandela, but his legacy lives on in all of us. Remember, you have the power to overcome any challenge, no matter how impossible it seems. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you feel inspired, share Mandela's story with others. Together, we can carry forward his message of hope, unity, and freedom. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories like this.